Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. In the past, movie months have been saved for whenever I fall behind schedule. That's kind of true this time too, actually, as my last series was much longer than usual. But even before that one got requested, I'd been planning to start dedicating at least 1 month out of the year to all the standalone movies I've been wanting to watch and review. This one's actually another request. Thank you, Crowned Clown, and one I'd never heard of, but Yume Iro Patissiere was so lighthearted and sweet, it left me itching for something dark and violent, making Sword of the Stranger a perfect follow-up. This movie takes place in an older time, when the wealthy could hire samurai to guard their estates. Japan was still very closed off to the rest of the world, and anyone who seemed like a foreigner was immediately regarded with suspicion. So everyone in the area is a little on edge, as the local lord is hosting a troupe of Chinese assassins. They're being allowed to build some sort of ritual altar on Lord Akaike's land in exchange for money and modern weapons. Not that the lord trusts them either. His samurai have been tasked with guiding the foreigners around and interpreting for them, and they report back that their guests are hunting down a young boy for some mysterious reason. This boy is Kotaro. He's an orphan, and along with his loyal dog Tobimaru, he's trying to get to a temple to meet up with a monk who took care of him in the past. He doesn't get far before the assassins catch up with him, but he's in luck. Kotaro's saved by a stranger who was camping out in the same abandoned shrine he'd taken refuge in. The man's an ex-samurai without a name. It's a while before these two are close enough for No Name to open up to him, but he eventually explains that he'd be given a new name under each master he served. He doesn't say much about why he left that life behind, but his nightmares are frequent enough for Kotaro to realize something about his past is still haunting him. Furthermore, though he still carries his sword with him, he's got it tied shut so he can't actually use it. Though he has no qualms about stealing and turning someone else's sword against them in the heat of battle. This handicap actually only serves to make him more impressive as a fighter, as he still bests their assailants, despite being outnumbered. But Tobimaru gets poisoned in the process. Through a combination of bribery and guilt-tripping him, Kotaro convinces No Name to take them at least as far as the next town, where they can find someone to heal him. It took a while for Kotaro to grow on me, to be honest. The demanding way he talks to his savior, he's really a brat, but by the time I got a little further into the movie, I realized some of that was due to my own misunderstanding. Despite the fact that Kotaro's literally a child and basically powerless, I get the feeling he was pretty well off before he was suddenly orphaned. The way he sees it, he's paying a professional for his services. Their dynamic isn't one of new friends, but that of master and servant. But of course, they do grow fond of each other, and No Name does end up escorting him the rest of the way. There are so many places to start with an overall look at this movie. The animation is fantastic. It's getting to be an older one now. It came out in 2007. But it's a perfect example of how Studio Bones got such a great reputation. I'll admit I don't know as much about some of the technical aspects of animation as I probably should, but there's nothing I love to see more than a fluidly choreographed fight scene, and Sword of the Stranger is full of those, from the very opening scene to just a few moments before the end. But it also offered a really interesting perspective. I feel like this is probably the most realistic portrayal of samurai I've ever seen. They're usually depicted to be very honorable. This movie takes a harsher approach, but it's harsh in a way that at least feels honest. The samurai were essentially mercenaries. There's this really great line early into the movie: "A man who works for money betrays for money." It's a sentiment that comes up again and again. The only thing this movie has more of than fights is betrayal, be it for wealth, power, the immortality drug they're planning to sacrifice Kotaro to make. I think I forgot to mention that that's the driving force behind this movie's plot. And I really would have liked even just one more line of detail to explain why they thought Kotaro was the child born once a century whose blood would make you live forever. That's one of the only complaints I had. I felt like I was missing just one last piece of information that might have made that make sense. But what's more important about this plot is that none of the Chinese soldiers seem to support the plan, either because they don't believe the miracle drug is even real, or because they take issue with the thought of anyone living forever. Their mindsets started to really stand out to me as I reached the end and saw so many alliances start to break down. The Chinese are actually depicted to be the more loyal group, and I'm not necessarily saying that sort of blind loyalty is better, killing for a cause they don't even believe in, but it was interesting to see the balance there, you know, that both sides had flaws. When writing any kind of story, that should be the case, but when that story reflects real life in any way, I just expect to see the bias reflected there too. I decided to watch this one in Japanese. Anything that has this sort of historical feel to it I like to watch subbed, which I bring up because I could only find it dubbed on Crunchyroll. Where I did end up finding it was Microsoft, which I didn't even know had any sort of movie rental service, so that felt like something I figured I'd share. I guess I have a new place to check from now on whenever I'm struggling to find a series. And though I can't speak for the dub, I kind of doubt it includes one of my favorite little details about the voice acting in the Japanese version. While I don't speak either language, it definitely sounded like a different language whenever the Chinese characters were speaking. Obviously, I can't account for any kind of accent they might have had either, but I thought it was a really nice touch. Helps it all feel a little more authentic. For all that I'm praising it, I feel like this review is turning out to be really short. My focal points and takeaways from this movie ended up being big picture things in general. There wasn't as much I wanted to say about the characters, the things that usually get me rambling off on tangents. But I don't mean to imply that the characters weren't also interesting. Kotaro grew on me over time. For all that he does start out sounding annoyingly arrogant, he is very young. He is both mature for his age and appropriately vulnerable at times. No Name was standoffish at first, but actually quite easy to like. From his very first fight, it's clear there's something honorable about him, and his desire not to cause any more harm if it can be avoided. Even the enemy's top fighter I was kind of attached to. From the start, he's portrayed to be absolutely ruthless, but he's a warrior through and through, and some of his values also had their own sort of honor to them. It comes down to a fight between these two, as Kotaro does get captured. I won't spoil the flashback that reveals what finally broke No Name, but it provides a really nice contrast to his decision to finally unsheath his sword again and fight to save Kotaro. And even then, knowing he's fighting for a perfectly respectable reason, a little detail I loved was that the killing blow still isn't struck by his own sword. It's not just that the fights looked cool, they were well thought out too. Thank you again, Crowned Clown, for requesting this one. I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, but I'm genuinely surprised I've never heard of this one. Story-wise, and technically speaking, Sword of the Stranger is a really impressive movie. Its animation did catch my attention from like the opening 20 seconds. You've left me quite a list of recommendations actually, at least one of which I'll be reviewing next month. Thank you for watching.